sort of way if they wish to. We think they could live in disparate pockets of the city. We don't care how they like work things out. But in society, two things. Number one, we think we're going to defend a world where probably polyamorous relationships are going to be normalized because a vast majority of individuals commit to it. This means this means you're going to romanticize that concept more than single partner relationships. You're going to mass market it, and you'll think that is appealing. Understand the reason why is because society currently shames individuals. The reason why it's so important is because society currently shames individuals who date more than one person at the same time by branding them as promiscuous, but by branding them as immoral, even when these individuals could like possibly be happier in those circumstances. We want to be in a world where your options are respected and where your preferences are not violated. We also think it is going to be designed in a way where society currently is designed in a way where you can spend a lot of time with friends, because I think that's what the majority of the arguments that O and closing will bring, is that how in order for meaningful relationships, you can always do that with your friends and family. But the problem is, in current status quo, your friends are busy all the time because they have business excursions, because they might have business meetings and they might have to go abroad, meaning you can't always reasonably expect all of your important friends to be with you at the same particular time. That is to say, you're probably going to need to have certain romantic relationships to feel that void, to feel that emptiness that is within you. With that being said, understand primarily what human beings really are. Historically, we were communal creatures, right? We wanted to be and felt protected by a lot of people living around us. That sense of togetherness is what's being broken down in current society and status quo. We're broken now to smaller and smaller compartmentalizations, where we have to be in a world where like the sole individual is the one primary focus of the neoliberal market, and we think that's extremely problematic, because the problem then is that you're over reliant on one single entity, because right now you don't have a community to surround yourself with. You can't form a bond of togetherness with individuals that are in the same position around you, with the same mentality around you, because society tells you that the only way you can like get happy is, sort of speaking, is to just be in one relationship with constrained rules with one partner. We think that's problematic. Before I move on, clarification, CEO.
Yeah, has this been in your world the norm for the majority of human history, or is this like a new norm from the past couple of years?
Yeah, I feel like it's going to be an organically changing norm, where right now in current status in our world, a vast majority of individuals support it and a vast majority of corporations recognize it, and therefore they're more appealing and more open to that idea. We think we're more tolerant of this overall. So what is our world going to look like, right? Because understand that panel, we have currently marketed romance to our world through single set structures, outside of which individuals do not understand love and fail miserably otherwise. Our world is going to look as such. First, there's going to be multiple relationships, right? What is the benefit of that? The benefit is the notion that you have right now of the perfect person fulfilling all of your satisfaction is dismantled, because inherently the premise of one soul tied to one single person is damaging, because you feel frustrated when you see that that person doesn't have all sorts of preferences you wish to have for that person. This means you have to actively sacrifice your wishes and your intents of what you want your ideal partner to be, because let's face it, no person will have every desirable trait that you want from them. This means that you're going to be objectively less happy, because you sit around late at night thinking of all the preferences and all the ideas and constructs you're sacrificing to be with one single person that you think is good enough. In our world, we dismantle that notion entirely, because we give you more options, right? We tell you that multiple partners can give you separate specific experiences, and this is true. Maybe you like attending debating tournaments with one partner. Maybe you like going to ballet and dancing with the other person. We think you're going to, in sum total, feel more experiences and feel connected in a better way, because you understand the way you connect with one person and the way you can't connect with someone else. We think this will reduce the frustration you feel when you have to force yourself to love someone that you can't really connect with. The impact is simple. You're objectively happier, but secondarily, you feel and like understand the greater perplexities of the human emotion, and you feel greater things because you don't have to hold yourself back and not have to feel things the way you'd always wanted to. Number two, we think in our world, we learn and form less damaging relationships overall. Because understand that breakups are easier when you like in a comparative. In their world, you imagine that you could rely on one single person, a person that meets all of your hopes, a person that fulfills all of your satisfaction, and you think that person relieves you from the trauma that you faced in your childhood in a way no other person can. In a sense, you're putting this person in a pedestal. The problem with that is, even if the relationship you're in right now is damaging, you ultimately stick by one another because you feel that's what, because you feel like because that's the image you received from society, that's the image you think is worth having, where what that person can't be replaced by anyone else. You're less willing to, by the way, to listen to anyone else's advice because you think no one understands you better, in which case you're more going to you're more likely to default into that single being with that person, even if it's very damaging for you. That concept of irreplaceability is detrimental for your career goals. First, it's because you have to sacrifice your jobs oftentimes because you have to focus on your partner. Number two, you also have to sacrifice your relationships with other people because now you have to focus on meeting the satisfaction and meeting the demands of like the single person. Number three, it is going to in our world, it is going to reduce the complexity that you have when you have feelings for someone else whilst being in the relationship, because these things can be easily mitigated from our side. In the comparative, in our world, multiple people exist. This means fundamentally it's easier to let go of individuals that have hurt you in a way that you don't want to be hurt anymore. Now multiple people meet your hopes, people can meet your dreams in different ways. You don't feel like you lose a part of yourself in the process of losing the one single person that you loved and cherished so much. This means your identity and self-worth is not tied to that one person. But we're willing to contest that even if you were to break up in a being in a polyamorous relationship, and if you feel like that person was very special to you, we think it's more likely in our side of the house to be friends with that person, because now both of you have different places to exert your feelings of pride, exert your feelings of sexual gratification towards other people, which makes it easier for you to move on, but more importantly, to stick by the relationships you think are fundamentally important to you and your sense of identity. We're very proud to propose.
Hi, I apologize in advance. There's some construction work going on around my house. You might hear like drilling voices in the middle. I'm sorry for that. Just starting my timer. 1 second.
No worries. I can't hear anything, so happy to call up the leader of opposition. Here.
Great. Okay. So starting in 3, 2, 1. One major piece and important piece of characterization that opening government missed on is that the world that we live in is capitalistic. Everybody does not have enough time to, for example, dedicate their entire day to all the friends and all the needs or opportunities that they might want to indulge in. The current capitalist world also means that the division of people's time between different people might be less of a possibility because people simply do not have time outside of their jobs, outside of their family, outside of their children, etc., to dedicate to multiple partners at the same time. But more importantly, right, the entire case of government rests on two assumptions. Number one, they assume that humans can be happy when their intimate needs are fulfilled and divided between different people, as opposed to one person probably fulfilling 70% of their needs and still them being happy being in a relationship with them. But the second idea, right, that people need to be happy, people need to spend a lot of time with someone, or people need to have a love from a lot of people to feel happy, and they can't, for example, indulge in other hobbies, other pastimes, or other areas where they might get happiness out of. So we don't think that this their case solves these problems. But more importantly, right, the biggest clash that we are going to establish in opening opposition is that a relationship with multiple people are definitely more damaging than a relationship with a single person. The first idea that government brought to you was that people usually one person won't be able to fulfill the wishes of their partner in its entirety. We also feel that we feel that on a comparative, it's less likely that people who are involved in multiple partner relationships are going to be more happy because, okay, fine, one partner might share their love for books, one partner might share their love for movies, etc. But the multiple divisions that are created between partners overall combined do not bring them as much happiness as perhaps one person bringing them 50%, sharing 50% of their interests and bringing those benefits for them. We we feel that human life is not infinite. The people have only a certain number of years that they might be alive in, which means that people generally want to be more happy and spend their time building emotional connections, building a family with one person, as opposed to dividing their time between multiple people. But more importantly, right, on damaging relationships, we feel that if relationships of single partners become toxic, if people don't feel happy, then they're we will at opposition, we will be more than happy for them to get out of that relationship, pursue love outside, find people who share their interests, etc. They don't have to limit themselves to damaging relationships. But more importantly, right, what are the benefits of having one primary partner that you can never, that one person being the human nature that government defined, you can never have in multiple partners? 5 things I'm going to talk about in my speech. One, there will be less jealousy in single partner relationships. There'll be better and more family building. There'll be better emotional connections. There'll be less conflicts, and there is going to be more acceptance. But more importantly, right, the human nature is generally designed in a way that we are insecure. We are jealous when people's attention are divided apart from us. We think that in this undivided attention phase that humans live in, it is more likely of a feeling of insecurity, feeling of jealousy to exist and worsen if there are multiple partners who then also have multiple partners to share their love and attention with. One person right now is not going to share the love and attention that they have in its entirety with you, but there'll be multiple people that they're going to share their love and attention with. This makes it likely that people who are in multiple partner relationships are more likely to feel insecure because they aren't getting the undivided time and attention that government brought you. But more importantly, right, multiple people relationships are more likely to be unequal relationships because they're going to be more involved in the relationships and desires of other people, which means that it's more likely for toxic relationships to be built. But apart from that, right, human beings generally have limited time, they have limited resources that they want to develop and invest in one person, as opposed to multiple people who might not even love them in the same way that they expect them to do so. We feel that it's better for an individual to build not only physical relationships but also mental and emotional relationship with one person, because people generally want love and attention, and people want to be accepted by that one partner that they have, right? So we feel that the impact of this is going to be that people investing their time and love into one individual is more likely to bring them better happiness and better fulfillment compared to multiple people who might not even value them the same way, because the individual is not their only partner, they also have multiple partners. Before moving on to the other point, I'll take CG.
I feel like insecurity stemming from jealousy stemming from insecurity is a chicken and egg problem. I would say that monogamy is probably more likely to cause this form of insecurity and jealousy than the insecurity and jealousy is to cause monogamy.
So the comparative here for both monogamy and multiple partner relationships is that you are less likely to be insecure and jealous when you have one partner, because that partner is more likely to give their love, their attention, share their interests with you because you are in a single partner relationship. As opposed to this, there are more instances of jealousy in multiple partner relationships because by and large, you are not the only partner that they have. So they divide both their time, their attention, and their love, or even their physical relationships between multiple partners as opposed to one. So we argue at opposition that it's more likely for feelings of jealousy and insecurity to materialize and worsen in multiple partner relationships. The debate is a comparative here. But more importantly, right, what we're going to argue about is family building and how it's better in a single person relationships. So humans have a tendency to procreate. Humans want their, for example, lineage, their name, for etc., or their ideals to go forward, which is why humans generally more often than not prefer to procreate than not. We feel that procreation and family building is going to be better. It's going to materialize better, and it's going to be better off in single partner relationships because of 2 reasons. One, the sharing of responsibility, and 2, the division of attention. In sharing of responsibility, it ensures that when 2 people, for example, in single partner relationships are taking care of their children, they have more sense of responsibility because they know that they're the only 2 people who their children depend on. The children, other than their parents, don't have anyone to look after them for. But in multiple partner relationships, when responsibilities are divided, it is less likely that people who are taking care of those children fall short of their responsibility, because they will be more likely to put the burden on other people who are sharing the responsibility, which means that when the responsibility shifts from 2 people to multiple people, it is more likely that the multiple people are going to fend off and not fulfill the responsibility in the same way. But more importantly, right, when one person has limited attention, limited love to divide between multiple partners and the families of multiple partners that they might have, children or people who are belonging belonging to those relationships might not get the same attention and the same feeling of bonding, etc., with their parents if their parents also have, let's say, multiple families, etc., and they won't be able to give them the same time, which means that the parent-child bond or the spouse and individual bond that might otherwise be likely to be formed in a single person relationship is going to be far greater, is going to be missing in a far greater comparative in government's model. Very proud to oppose.
I thank the Leader of Opposition for that speech. I'd now like to invite up the Deputy Prime Minister to continue the case for government bench. Hear, hear.
Just give me 30 seconds and I will get my notes in order to start. All right, can I be heard?
Yep.
Cool. I will start in 10 seconds. Let me get my timer out. Starting in 3, 2, 1. Panel, notice how chronocentric our conception of relationships are. The norm of single partner relationships originated in the mid-18th century through the movement of romanticism in literature and art. Our current perception of love is centered around the romantic literature by people like Shelley, by people like Lord Byron, etc. This narrative on their side tells you that you must look for your one true love because your solace and your destiny can only be found from one person. It looks like heroes dying for the loved one. It looks like someone giving up all of their possessions to pursue their love, giving up their family, giving up their society to go for their one true love. This is the narrative that is sold by art, that is sold by media, that must depend on their world. Because you're constantly told that one person is a panacea to all of your struggles, someone who will understand you, someone who will understand your innate needs almost telepathically. You don't even have to tell them. They will relate to your soul. But that is not how society always was, right? Margaret Mead famously looked into sex-positive polyamorous societies of Samoans in the past and found that these communities had greater happiness. The reason why they had greater happiness is pointed out by my Prime Minister when he talks about the lack of expectation that you have. You don't base your self-worth on one person. You don't think if you don't get that one person, you will die. You don't force yourself to stay in a relationship because there is no conception of a perfect partner in that world. You get to share your desires with a lot of people. You get different sorts of stimuli that trigger happiness in a prolonged way. Because understand that on their world, in their best case, when you get the perfect partner, that is their best case. Even on that case, there's normalization and lack of diversity. You normalize interactions that you have. Nothing feels special anymore after a period of time, but we still live in that relationship because it's a sunk cost, right? You've invested 5 years into it. You've invested your money into it. You've relocated for your wife, and now you just can't let them go. And breaking up hurts extremely. This is why the status quo has so many sexless and loveless relationships that they need to defend on their side of the house, something that they haven't done, something my PM already pointed out. But what do we get from opening opposition? The first is the world is capitalistic. People cannot dedicate time to multiple people. To be fair, the comparative is, on their world, you try to satisfy every single need of one person. In our world, you satisfy some needs of 2 or 3 or maybe 4 people. But if you look at it, some needs are easier to satisfy than others. You can choose the needs that you are more likely to satisfy or is easier for you to satisfy. Your partner will also have other partners who will satisfy her different needs that you find difficult to satisfy. On their world, all of the needs will have to be satisfied by you. Needs that you even find difficult will have to be satisfied by you. That, I would posit, costs you more time and costs you more energy because you're unwilling to satisfy those needs because you just find them too difficult to satisfy. On our world, those needs can be satisfied by different partners, and therefore we break the comparative here. Then they tell you that there will be less jealousy in single partner relationships. We are all insecure and we are all jealous, right? Insecurity is greater on their world because your entire self-worth and because your entire perception of security is predicated on the total submission of one person, that one person belongs to you. You need to understand that that one person is yours. And if you get that, you feel secure because that one person is doing everything for you. The moment in time that one person rejects your request, rejects one single thing that you wanted from them, you start to feel insecure. And this is why insecurity and status quo is at the highest, right? You peep into your partner's Instagram to see if they're chatting with a different girl. You go to a psychologist because you're insecure. And this is exactly why we need polyamorous relationship, because you always suspect your partners of having feeling for someone else in a world that single partner relationships are there. You are uncomfortable if a partner does not give you all of your attention. You are uncomfortable if a partner just says, that girl looks pretty. Since people cannot date multiple people at once in their world, they feel insecure and often they have suppressed desires that come out in different forms that make their partners feel worse and make their partners feel more insecure. Then they tell you that procreation is better on their world. First of all, they've not proven why procreation is good. I think it's a very bad thing to do. There are 3 reasons why it's bad. First, it leads to a population boom. The world cannot take more population because the climate is screwing us all over. And we'll probably be happier if people gave birth to less people. Second, it uniquely harms women. It stops them from climbing the corporate ladder because no one wants to hire a pregnant woman. You have a delay in your workforce participation, and that leads to a vitiation of a lot of your skills. You fall behind your contemporaries and you feel demotivated as a woman. Third, it's extremely painful procedure, right? Women still concede to it on their world because of societal pressure. On our world, as they say, we will replace this narrative. We will not tell women that you must procreate with one person because the expectation of procreation will naturally go down in a world where we endorse things like polyamory. But some people will still procreate, and I think that's fine. But the number of people who procreate will be significantly less on our world. I'll take CEO if they have any. CEO?
How satisfied do you think you can be if you are in a relationship with 4 different people that want to live in the city and you want to live in the village?
I think you can find 4 people who live in the village unless there's only 1 people in that village and that is you. Then you're probably very lonely and you probably wouldn't get a relationship in either world. But in a world where we endorse polyamory, you must understand that the burden for one person to keep a relationship goes down, where breakups become more accessible and are less shamed by the rest of the society. And that is why if you feel like you want to live in a village, you can probably find 2 or 3 people who want to live in that village with you or want to live around that village for you. I think that is entirely possible. But understand this. We need different partners because different partners are able to satisfy a diverse set of desires that we have, which one person cannot satisfy. We might love economics, but we cannot share our knowledge of economics, the things we learn in our class, with one person who's probably an art graduate who has no interest in economics, but we have other desires that match with that person, and therefore we're okay with living with that person. However, if we had a different relationship where we could share that, where we could feel closer to that person, I think that would be better. But finally, why can't friends satisfy those needs? Because first of all, friends cannot satisfy your sexual desires, which is a strong base desire that all of us have. Friends cannot give you prolonged company, especially at nights, points in which you're most vulnerable because you cannot live consistently with your friends. You cannot also divulge close secrets that you have with your friends because you feel uncomfortable. For all of these reasons, I don't think friends are necessarily an alternative. Polyamory is the best way to go, and it was the way up until 18th century, and people were happier. Suicide rates are higher now. Depression is higher now. I think single partner relationships and romanticism is to blame.
I thank that speaker for their speech. I'd now like to invite up the Deputy Leader of Opposition to close the case for opening opposition. Hear.
Am I audible?
Yep.
Oh, just a second. All right, starting in 3, 2, 1. Panel, let's bring back some crucial pieces of framing and crucial pieces of analysis and characterization that our opening government missed out. What were those? We think particularly what we need to understand in this debate is human nature in itself, and what do human intimate needs require and how they can be fulfilled. We think by virtue of human nature, we think humans are people who want certainty and long-term stability and consistency. We think uncertainty, not knowing what the future holds for them, are things that humans are afraid of, and things humans are less inclined to find happiness in. We think that is when that long-term stability, that consistency comes about when you have a single partner that you can rely on consistently, that you know is going to give you their attention undivided, and is someone that you can rely on, instead of four different people who are dividing their time and attention between four different sets of people. But also, secondly, within human nature and the intimate side of it involves something which includes emotional and sexual connection. We think that that is something that is based on trust, and that trust is something that is built with time, with investment, and not with shallow conversations or shallow or limited time spending. That trust building happens when you spend excessive amounts of time with someone, when you get to know them to the very depths, and only then you develop that trust that you can open up to them sexually, that you can open up to them emotionally. That is something that you cannot enjoy once you have multiple partners who you're giving undivided attention, with whom you have divided expectations and responsibilities, as opposed to a single partner. But thirdly, we think that the idea of emotionally opening up itself is something which is very, very emotionally exhausting, and which is very and might take a toll on individuals. We don't think that that is an exercise that individuals would want to repeat with different people in different sets over time. Rather, they would much prefer having one person that they can rely on, having one person that they can open up to in all of these very avenues. So we tell you that this sort of intimate needs of humans is something which can only come about from one person. We think all the examples that they give, for example, sharing your needs for sharing your interest for economics, or sharing your interest in art, are something which friends can fulfill. We think friends, even if they don't have time, they can have enough time to, for example, take out some time in a week to go to the movies with you. And if the ideas are about people not having time, then people are not just going to have enough time to invest in you, or these multiple partners are just not going to have enough time for you, for them to invest in you, so that trust building can come about, so that emotional connection can come about, so that you can learn or understand the love language of your partner, etc. We think that only comes about once you spend enough time, enough effort into an individual. That is not going to come about otherwise. And we tell you that these needs which I've highlighted are unique and cannot be fulfilled by friends, because these are intimate, that these require a lot of trust, a lot of time, and that is why they cannot be replicated over. But the second idea about human nature is the idea of insecurity. The idea of insecurity involves is that you want certain amount of attention, undivided attention of an individual for yourself over time, because that is just how humans function, right? They want someone that they can rely on, they can trust on, and they want that sort of feeling to be reciprocated for them. That cannot happen once a partner is divided into lots of different, whose attention is divided into lots of different people. And once that happens, their expectations are divided. The expectations are also limited. You can simply say that you're not supposed to expect this from me, because you have multiple other partners as well. Nobody would want to take up that responsibility in itself. And that is something which bleeds and adds on to insecurity, adds on to jealousy and toxicity within a relationship that is on a comparative much greater than single partner relationships. Notice how all of their harms of single partner relationships, such as bad breakups, or such as you being overly reliant on a person, are worst case scenarios where breakups do happen, or where a toxic relation does develop. We tell you that even in this worst case scenario, we think you still have something to take away from a breakup, from being reliant on one person, because it has taught you a lot about your own emotional needs, about what you want from a relationship, tells you how you do not have to compromise in certain areas, that can only come about once you develop and invest long enough in one particular relationship, and not very limited shallow relationships over time. But thirdly, there's also an idea about how humans are just not capable of giving equal attention and equal love to different people. They're simply not, as humans by virtue of their nature, capable of feeling the same way emotionally about different people at the same time. There are always people who you are more interested in, who you want to give more attention to, who you have more love for, as opposed to others, just by the basis of just by virtue of how different relationships are. The fact is, once you have more people, once you're dividing your attention and your time and resources between different people, the problem is that the person that you're more inclined towards might not be inclined towards you in the same way, as opposed to one-on-one relationship where they're already given expectations. We think in a polyamorous relationships, the level of expectation is very, very limited and not given. And we think that is something which is a problem, and that is something which means that you are much likely to get more hurt. You're much likely to feel much more insecure because your idea of love is not being reciprocated. Lastly, we think that particularly in the framing of a capitalist world, they tell us that no, people previously did have communal relationships, etc., and that worked really well. You only all of this exacerbated because you're romanticizing relationships. We don't single person relationships. We don't think that's true. We think capitalism and industrial revolution brought about you living away from communal relationships in more single person or more nuclear sort of households where you're more individualistic. We think in this time you have lesser and lesser time. Because you're spending time on work, on entertainment, etc. So you have lesser and lesser time to divide. So if that lesser time is divided into further lesser individuals, you are less likely to develop any meaningful relationship or only develop temporary relationships with these individuals because you're spending time on very temporary things over very temporary things. Given all of these reasons, we have told you and explained to you why humans are just simply less likely to be happy in multiple partner relationships as opposed to their needs within a single partner relationship being fulfilled much, much better. But lastly, on the point of children and on women, they tell us that we don't need much children because there's a problem of overpopulation. Sure, but people still continue to procreate. That is something which is part of human nature. That is something which people will still want. Within once you're divided within multiple people or within polyamorous relationships, people are just less likely to take responsibility, and female burden is just much, much worse on your model because the children coming out of these relationships are because society takes it as a given that women are supposed to take care of these children. Women are going to bear the brunt and having to take care of these children, especially as single people on their own, because men or other parents their responsibility is going to be divided. They're already going to be catering to lots of different people in different families, and that is not only going to be harmful for children because they now have lesser attention and lesser responsibility being given to them, but females are now just largely overburdened. On all those grounds, proud to oppose.